Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender. It is time for final thoughts about the 97th Academy Awards. I'm very happy to welcome Cody Dericks from Next Best Picture back today for our final thoughts about the show, about how we did and our predictions, and anything else we want to talk about here. This is kind of our wrap-up video about the Oscars this year. How are we doing, Cody?
Doing pretty well. It feels like this season hit the brakes hard at the end, and now I'm kind of like, oh, we're done.
I know, right?
Okay.
It's
But
so
I'm ready to
crazy.
move on. I'm ready. I'm ready to move on. It's a new year.
Yeah.
It's March. It's a new year.
It happens every year, Cody. It's weird, doing what I do and what we both do, like talking about the Oscars, reflecting, like analysis, predictions for months, and then it's always strange. You get to the show, and 3.5 hours later, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of that work, all of the talks. It's just like it's over. It's like very
Now imagine
strange.
those who lose Oscars feel after months of campaigning for not.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you think Demi Moore felt in that moment? Oh my God. We'll talk about
I'll
it.
tell you how I felt. Exactly.
We'll talk about, of course we're going to talk about actress. Before we get to the best actress race, Cody, what was your overall thoughts about the show? Like this year's Oscars. Were you happy, sad, indifferent? Like, what were your thoughts?
I thought the show was pretty decent. I thought Conan was a good host.
Mhm.
Actually, I'll say he was a great host. One of the better ones we've had in a while. I don't usually really care so much about the host. I'm here for the awards. I'm here for the movies. The host is mostly there to kind of just move things along, and he did exactly that. He had a great opening. He didn't do that thing that I hate when they do, where he didn't make fun of the movies. He didn't make fun of the people there. He didn't kind of go like, why are we doing this? In fact, he actually, I think, nicely gave the moment context in regards to the wildfires and political disarray. He basically faced that head on and looked right in the camera and said, why do we do this? Why bother? Because it's a celebration of this craft. It's highlighting people who otherwise you may not ever get the chance to see highlighted. And I thought that was a really sweet is the word coming to mind. I thought that was a very sincere approach to hosting the Oscars, and I really appreciated him for it.
Yeah, that would have disappointed me about Conan O'Brien if he had turned this into like the Ricky Gervais show at the beginning and just said, why are we doing this? There's so many more important things in the world. Like, he really did make it a celebration at the beginning, which I loved. I found out, Cody, after the show that one of my old friends from college, and we were roommates for 3 years, Scott Gardner, he directed the segments for the show starring O'Brien, the Substance spoof at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like my old friend,
it was good.
He texted me with behind the scenes photos and he said, Brian, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, what are you doing there? He's like, I directed the Substance spoof.
That's amazing.
I was like, what? So yeah, I'm going to talk to him this week. It was such a thrill to hear about that. I thought he did a great job. That was so freaking funny. The Substance spoof of him crawling out of Demi Moore and forgetting his shoe. That was so good. And it was so Scott too, like knowing he had done that. I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. But yeah, I really liked his monologue. I thought like the opening 20 minutes of the show were outstanding. There's been some mixed, reactions to Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, like opening the show. I thought that was great. You didn't like it?
No, I did. I'm saying the haters, take a seat.
I thought that was great. I mean, I was in a room full of Wicked lovers and we were just like, oh, this is awesome. I thought that was a beautiful way to open the show.
And it wasn't just Wicked. She sang songs.
Yeah.
They sang songs
Over
from
the
The
Rainbow.
Us. They sang songs from The Wiz. So it was really all about celebrating the films that led to Wicked.
Yeah.
Which is to say, it was a celebration of Hollywood because it was a movie from the 30s, a movie from the 70s, and a movie from today. So you got like a celebration of a bunch of eras. I'm not naive enough to think that this wasn't, basically a ploy to get viewers' attention because of Wicked being
That's right,
the biggest film of the Best Picture nominees. But who cares? This is a celebration of the movies that are being awarded this year, and it's not like Wicked wasn't nominated for Oscars. It was. It was one of the movies being celebrated this year, so I was totally fine with it. They were great. They looked amazing. The production was incredible. I had no problems with this.
Yeah, so I thought the opening was great. As the show went on, Cody, I would say the second half of the show, it didn't come on quite as strong. by the end, I was like, okay, let's just get to actress. So what I was feeling, in the second half, but the opening was great, and yeah, I mean, overall, I'd give it like a 7.5. It wasn't like one of the best ceremonies of the last 20 years, but it was pretty solid. I was happy.
My biggest hang-up had nothing to do with the ceremony itself. But the fact that this was being advertised as the first time you could live stream the Oscars on a streaming device. First time it's streaming. Because at my viewing party, we were watching it on Hulu.
Okay.
What happens after Sean Baker gives this great speech about the importance of the theatrical experience, the necessity of movie theaters for the American culture, for artistic integrity, basically, subliminally, an anti-streamer speech, the feed cut.
Right.
What the hell are we doing here?
So talk me through this, Cody. So is it true the feed on Hulu cut out right before Actress?
It cut out after Best Director. So there it was during a commercial break.
And were you able to finish the show? Did it come back?
We cobbled together some HDMI stream. I don't know what happened. But a lot of people weren't. I know a lot of people who followed the Oscars religiously and missed out on the two biggest categories because some idiot at Hulu decided that it needs to end exactly at 9:30, as if the Oscars have ever ended on time. Are you kidding me?
But like, that's crazy. Like, you can't do that. Like, I mean, the two biggest categories in a way, actress and picture. We ended up, like, the person I was with had cable and we watched it on ABC. I would have gone absolutely crazy if I had missed Actress live. That would have really, really bummed me out. So
no, all we saw was like a taunting message on the screen that said, "Thanks for watching," as if it was done. No, it was absurd.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like, yeah, when I got to my friend's house, I was like, so, it's available on Hulu. We can just stream it. And they were like, oh, no, I have cable. Like, we can just put on ABC. I was like, oh, okay, that works. Like, oh, man. Dodged a bullet there.
Disaster. Yeah.
So I'm sorry to hear that. So were you able to watch Actress live?
Yeah.
Like, once
we
it happened? Okay, you got it together.
But we were lucky that we were able to. And a lot of people did not have any backup option. And so just had to follow it on Twitter.
Okay. I mean, I'm hoping... is this naive of me, Cody? I'm hoping that will never happen again. They will figure that out for next time. Like, oh, okay, we have to really make sure, if the show goes long, our audience gets to finish it.
But I'll tell you this, next year, I'm going to be real nervous if I go somewhere to watch it and they're watching it on Hulu.
They're like, Hulu.
They better figure it out. So.
That would be crazy if they did. I mean, I'm sure they got thousands of complaints. That would be crazy if they did it again.
And they deserve every single one of them. It's absurd. It would be like, the Super Bowl cutting off in the middle of the fourth quarter. Sports metaphor. Or something like that. It'd be just... it was ridiculous. And we've seen time and again that streaming is trying to do live TV and they just cannot pull it off. And I've seen a lot of people be like, maybe I'm just going back to cable because I'm tired of paying for a million services I don't use and getting bad service and price increases. I mean, like, I'm very obviously pro the theatrical experience, so I guess that makes me anti-streaming. So this was just one more strike against them.
Yeah, I mean, if Hulu had cut out during the James Bond tribute, that would have been okay.
It was fine. I mean...
So
I have
Cody
a problem with that conceptually. I did not like the performances. I thought everybody sounded pretty bad.
So my choice, I just put out a video, top 10 best and worst moments of the show. My choice for number one worst was the James Bond tribute, not because it was like poorly produced necessarily, but I did not understand why it was there. Was my question. Any moments from the show you didn't like it, beyond maybe the Bond tribute? Like, what did you not like?
I didn't hate the Bond tribute in theory. I think the execution wasn't amazing, but I'm always going to appreciate something at the Oscars that's just a, bold-faced celebration of the movies. There was, to your point, there wasn't really a reason to do it besides them offering the Broccolis at the Governor Awards. And it's not like there's been a Bond movie in the past 4 years, so...
Yeah, it was weird.
But I mean, my worst moments were mostly to do with the speeches, which is not the ceremony itself, but there were one or two speeches that were really, really hard to watch. But otherwise, I didn't really have any low points of the ceremony. It moved pretty nicely. Yeah. There was nothing embarrassing or egregious or really unfunny. It was a mostly funny, propulsive ceremony, and that's really all I need the Oscars to be.
Yeah, so what was your final score? Was it 18 out of 23 or 19?
18. I got 5
18.
wrong.
Okay, yeah, I got 17. If I had just gone with No Other Land, why couldn't that movie win something, Cody? Why couldn't it have just won something? Then I would have gone with it.
Sometimes you gotta just, and I don't know why then, because I predicted No Other Land, but I don't know why I wasn't able to use the same logic to correctly predict Flow, because I think those won for the same reasons. Same with I'm Still Here, which I also predicted correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it after. I'm like, if Flow had just won a BAFTA and No Other Land had just won a BAFTA, I would have got 19. It's just like they didn't win there. So
yeah,
it's just like going off of like, feeling, I guess.
I got 1 out of 3 of the shorts right, which I'm not too sad about because the 2 I got wrong, animated and live action, went to ones that I didn't even have as a runner-up, or really anybody. I didn't see a lot of predictions for those 2 winners, but I did get Doc Shore right, and I think you did too.
The Only Girl in the Orchestra, as we talked about, that made sense. But yeah, that was wild, Cody, watching the other 2 shorts categories. And, we had those discussions, and you were talking about, well, it could be these 2, maybe this third one, and the 2 other winners, I don't think we even brought up.
I thought In the Shadow of the Cypress could happen because of the beauty of the animation. I did not have I'm Not a Robot as a potential winner. That was maybe my number 4 at best.
Because you watched all of the shorts. Were those 2 shorts like looking back now, or are you like, it makes sense why those 2 won?
I'm Not a Robot does make sense because it is only one of 2 shorts in that category, that and Anusia, that aren't like deadly depressing.
Okay.
It is still, and it has something to say about modern technology, AI, I guess you could say. In The Shadow of the Cypress, I think only really won because of the beauty of the animation. I personally found it a little thematically troubling. Some weird things about domestic violence in there that just never really resolved. And unfortunately, that same strange feeling about like what men can do to women in a much less extreme version were also kind of reflected in the way that the speech was handled by the winners, where the I'm sorry, I don't know their names. The woman director, the female director, was giving the speech and started it in maybe the wrong place, and then the other director snatched it out of her hands and was like, no, you're doing it wrong, and started reading the exact same thing she just read. It was really weird, and I don't fault somebody whose first language is obviously not English for having trouble with the speech, but the way that the energy of that was... It felt very, very strange. And again, it did remind me of troubling issues I had with the short itself, but...
Yeah, and then you texted me soon before the ceremony. You said you were thinking about switching to Anora in editing. You never did? It never felt right to me, Cody. I'm like, Conclave is not going to win adapted screenplay and editing and nothing else. That never felt right to me, and it turned out to be true.
It's that. It's also the fact that it's not like Conclave is The Matrix or Whiplash.
Right, it wasn't
or something
like
with really,
flashy.
or Mad Max Fury Road. Something with really obvious editing that's gonna win no matter what. So I think voters not having an option like that on the ballot, really, except for, you could argue, Amelia Perez.
Yeah.
I think they just went with their favorite movie, and I had that as the reasoning. I think I texted you the same thing. And I didn't switch, and I should have, because I should have. And then at that point, you go, well, it's going to win Best Actress as well. Sorry, Yora Borisov, you're the only not winner for Anora. But I'm not too sad with the ones I got wrong. I think my incorrect predictions, besides the 2 shorts in animated feature, actress, and editing, were well argued.
Yeah.
Your Honor.
Yeah. So let's get into those categories. I mean, I was just like, Anora has had enough vulnerabilities all season. Like, I just don't see it being a near sweep and only missing supporting actor. Like, I did not feel that going into the ceremony, Cody, because of all of the big categories and places it missed since January. I'm like, Sean Baker's not going to win 4. I can't imagine they're going to do that. And they did, and it's like, okay, PGA, DGA. That was huge. That we really have to look to that every year because it really paid off on this one.
I was less hung up on being uncertain about Sean Baker winning 4. That didn't bother me because, and I think I said this in our predictions video. Every year, it seems, with this new Academy, so the last 6 years or so, there's been little mini, you could call them stats, you could call them patterns, that break, that fall. That we're not necessarily locked in, but we're just kind of coincidences. Things like Everything Everywhere winning 3 acting awards, Spotlight winning just picture and writing, acting awards going to non-Best Picture nominees. So I think what this indicates is that the current Academy is less hung up on old voting patterns and mindsets. Also, another thing that I never really bought the Sean Baker's going to win 4, they're not going to do that argument was his name's not on the ballot for Best Editing.
For editing.
And I don't know if it's on the ballot for screenplay and picture. It definitely is for director, obviously. But they're voting and editing just based on the film. So if they like the movie Anora, they're going to give it Best Editing. I didn't really buy the Sean Baker hesitation. Yeah,
they're not seeing Sean Baker's name under editing. They're just, I bet most people didn't even know that. They're just like checking off Anora.
They're like, can't even get the Academy to watch the movies, let alone pay attention to who edited them. So,
I still think it's funny because casting is the new category starting next year, and I think he also cast the film. So if that had been introduced this year, he would have won 5.
That's crazy. For that movie, which I loved, but it's so. I mean, I think it just speaks to his ability as a visionary to craft an entire movie around his mind, around his vision, around his perspective on this story, because the Academy clearly aligned with his vision. They awarded him in every department that he had a hand in that they could. So they clearly were in tune with how he wanted to tell this specific story and how he went about doing so.
And it's not like Anora was in like 11 categories, you know. I mean, if the film had a lot more nominations, maybe it wouldn't have won, you know, everything. But because it was like in those key categories that it could win, it makes sense now in retrospect why it happened. But Cody, let's get to Best Actress. We got to talk about actress because we both got that wrong. Yeah. We both went with Demi Moore, and like when Emma Stone said Mikey Madison. I mean, by that point in the ceremony, it kind of made sense. When Anora went editing, I was like, oh man, it's probably going to be Madison. But so why were we so confident about Moore? Let's talk about it. Why did we think it was going to be Demi Moore?
A few things. Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, SAG. That's not nothing.
That's not nothing.
The movie is nominated for Best Picture. That's not nothing.
And director. Yeah.
And director. Clearly the Academy liked it. And I stand by that. There's going to be a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going, well, they just didn't like horror. It still was a Best Picture nom.
Got into picture.
I understand that they may not have finished the movie. I understand that they may have had issues with the tone. That's possible. It was undeniably a film that the Academy liked. Just like Emilia Perez, just like The Brutalist. Right. Not on the same level, obviously, but it was. The Academy chose it as one of the 10 best films of the year. That is an undeniable fact.
Yeah.
So, I think what really had me locked into Demi, despite the BAFTA last-minute surge of Anora or of Mikey Madison, was her narrative. I thought her narrative would really appeal to Academy voters. Yeah. Especially because her win would fit in with a lot of recent wins.
Yeah,
they've been really... Brendan Fraser, Michelle Yeoh even, they've been really into awarding what I'm calling like Gen X legends. You know, they gave it to Renee again, Brendan Fraser, Michelle Yeoh. So Jamie Lee Curtis is another one. So I think it just made sense. And also, maybe part of me thought Mikey Madison is a little bit too unknown, is a little bit too young. That was naive of me because obviously, to my point about the substance, they were clearly watching Anora. So even if they didn't know who she was before the movie, they knew who she was after the movie. So I still stand by that a prediction for Demi Moore was a good prediction. It wasn't like based in hope. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't a long shot. I do think this was probably the closest category of the entire night. This or editing.
I would love to see the final tally. Show it to me, Academy.
Fernando Torres was probably hovering around third place as well with a very respectable haul, I'm sure, given that I'm Still Here won international feature.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's an argument to be made. I've heard people say that maybe Fernando Torres pulled votes away from Demi Moore. I'm not really going to entertain that. That's just too mathy for me. I think at the end of the day, they just loved Anora. And Mikey Madison gives a great performance. I do not begrudge her win at all. I am sad that Demi lost, not that Mikey won.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think I texted you this. When Demi lost, it felt like we missed a moment. It was the moment
of the show that we missed, not the win necessarily for Madison. That's well earned. That's great. I love that performance. But yeah, it like in a show that didn't have a lot of great speeches, a lot of great moments in that regard, I knew we had just missed probably the speech of the night. That would have been spectacular. But it's like, is that all we care about? The speech, Cody? Like it's the win. It's like the best performance. It's not just the speech
for me. It was the story that her journey this award season was telling, and the Oscars are about telling a story. They really, as movies are, so are the Oscars. They are about putting an underline on a person's career, putting an asterisk next to their name, and Demi Moore's story this season, based on the trajectory of her precursor wins, the journey of her film, even the movie's themes itself, would have ended very nicely with Demi Moore winning, and that didn't happen. So I think that's why a lot of people like you and I, and a lot of people we know, feel a little bit like it was like a rug being pulled out from under us, because it was a little deflating. It was a little destabilizing. And again, I'm not saying anything against Mikey Madison's win. I think she gives a great performance. It is a good win. I'm happy to see them awarding a new star, somebody that doesn't have decades and connections behind them. That is great. But Demi Moore losing did just feel a little disappointing.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm like, Brian, it should be the best performance wins the Oscar. And, I've called Madison and Anora the performance of the year. So I have had people come at me a little bit like, Brian, why weren't you excited for Madison? Like, that was your favorite performance. It's a weird thing. Like, my head said Madison, my heart said Demi Moore. I don't know. There was just something there that I've loved her for so long, and she did so well. It's not like she just won like a single prize somewhere. The substance wasn't in picture or director. Then I would have looked kind of crazy, I would say. But it's like, Cody, I was like, okay, if she had not won at SAG, I would have gone with Madison, probably. If the substance wasn't in picture director, I would have gone with Madison. If the substance wasn't winning makeup, I might have gone with Madison. But we've had 3 years of the makeup and acting win combo. So there were like 3 things where I was like, it's probably going to be more unless they go all in on Anora. If Anora hadn't been quite as strong, Cody, if it had missed one of those top 3, I would say picture, director, or screenplay, if it had been vulnerable somewhere, I think more would have done it. It's that Anora came on so strong that they were not going to deny Madison that Oscar win.
Right. And anybody saying it should be about the best performance, the Oscars should award objectively the best, which is not really a possible thing.
They don't typically do that.
Watching your first Oscars, I guess. I hope you're excited for your kindergarten graduation. Are you new here? That's not what this is about. It never, ever has been since Mary Pickford bought the second ever Best Actress win for Coquette, which is the worst win in that category.
It's so bad.
So it's just never been the case. You can be naive and say that is the case, and it should be. I'm not saying it's not. But Demi Moore nor Mikey Madison would get my personal vote. I would have voted for Cynthia Erivo. So I'm just stumping for Demi Moore for, again, what the story of her win would tell, because that's what the Oscars are for. They are for awarding a person beyond their what they did with the movie. And yes, we can pretend it is about they gave the best performance of the year. They've checked off all the things on the imaginary acting rubric that doesn't exist. It's not about that. It's never been about that. Demi Moore winning would have felt more like an assumption, an ascendancy at the end of this season. And that just didn't happen. So for people like you and I, that's why it feels disappointing.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, I talked about it in my reaction video, Cody. I had two people film me, and when Madison won, I had almost no reaction. I was just like, "Oh, great!" Like I was like getting ready to jump to my feet and go crazy. And it just in the hours after that, I was just like, Brian, it's a good win. Madison's great. Like, what is your problem, Ryan? Like, last year, I stuck to my guns with Emma Stone, who I thought gave the best performance of the year in Poor Things, and most people just went over to Gladstone. She had more of the narrative, and I understood that, but I was like, I don't know. I just think Stone has won enough, and she has, the performance really like just holds this movie together. So Cody, next year in actress, do you think you won't go with the narrative?
I mean, every year is different.
You know, it's always different. You don't really know.
Because in 2022, exactly, and I predicted that correctly. But again, they loved her movie. So
but the movie, if Tara had been winning more in picture director, it probably would have been Blanchett. But because Everything Everywhere did so well at the end there, it made sense that was going to go.
I think the lesson to learn here is that, obviously, as we've known lately, especially with things like Coda winning, Poor Things surging at the end, where you are at a moment in the race is more important than everything that's come before. And undeniably, Anora was the strongest film in the last 3 weeks of the race or so, ever since PGA, DGA.
Yeah.
And I think that did nothing but help it at the perfect time. Timing is everything here. So, yes, Demi Moore had this amazing path going back from Cannes. So did Mikey Madison. And her movie just had the right fire behind it at the perfect time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is the case every year. I feel like this year, especially, like winning at Golden Globes and Critics' Choice doesn't mean shit, right? They don't really care when they're voting at the Oscars. When it comes to actress, because BAFTA happened for Madison right at the end of Oscar voting, Cody. It was like the last 2 days. So it's not like that win for Madison necessarily would have helped that much because a lot of votes were probably already in for actress. So
true.
You can look to Madison. Yeah.
The thing about the Globes is that they're so early that they basically set the temperature for the season and give voters permission for what they can vote for.
Okay.
You can vote for Kieran Culkin. You can vote for Zoe Saldana over Ariana Grande. We can give Adrian Brody a second. All these things kind of steamrolled from the Globes. And that's been true a lot lately.
Do you think at the Globes, if Ariana Grande had won, Grande would have swept?
I don't think she would have swept, but I think there would have been more of a fight. I don't think it would have been sweet for Zoe.
Yeah.
I could see Ariana winning at SAG after that and it being real contentious, just like Actress was. But I mean, again, every year is different. And I think timing and passion are really what wins you Oscars nowadays.
Yeah, and that's what it came down to. I just thought the passion here in Actress, it's got to be Demi Moore. I just feel like there's going to be a little bit more passion for her, even those voters who love Anora. Mikey Madison, as you said, is so new. I'm just like, there has to be that thinking of like, well, Madison will be back soon. Like, she's so talented. She's young. She'll be back. This is probably the only chance we have to give Moore an Oscar. And that thinking just doesn't really play a big role, Cody. It's sometimes they go with the performance they love the most, and that was Madison.
I think another thing is when we give these overdue Oscars, you have to, and this is going to sound a little rude. I promise I'm not being shady. You have to, I think, have had the kind of career beforehand that was worthy of awards. Hold on. Let me explain. So, because Demi Moore's loss here reminds me a lot of people losing, like Michael Keaton, Eddie Murphy,
Mickey Rourke,
Sylvester Stallone for Creed. People who had, very successful careers, but careers that never really touched Oscar up till this point. Obviously, Stallone had Rocky 40 years earlier, I understand. But, Michael Keaton, not so much. Eddie Murphy made a lot of enemies in Hollywood. Mickey Rourke made a lot of enemies in Hollywood. And I think Demi Moore, while she wasn't disliked in ways that those men were, she never really had a moment before this of, she was snubbed for that. She should have won for that. Like, the closest she came to Oscars arguably was Ghost. And I don't think there's any belief that she was snubbed of a nomination there, really.
No. She was probably in, maybe not 6th, but 7th or 8th. She was in the top 10. She got a Globe nomination.
So I think what this says is that, yes, her narrative was perfect, I thought. Voters' ballots are private. This is a private vote, so they look at Demi Moore, they look at Mikey Madison, they really liked Anora, they vote for Anora. I think that's kind of what it just came down to.
Yeah, no, and that I've seen that comment too. It's like, did they owe Demi Moore an Oscar? It's not like she had been nominated 5 times before, had a bunch of amazing performances, as I touched on in my Elusive Oscar video. I think she's been very good in certain films, but yeah, this was kind of her first like real moment to shine in a movie, like to get an Oscar nomination. So yeah, it's not like she had this incredible career, like in all of these amazing movies necessarily. But it's like, well, what about Glenn Close? Like, Glenn Close can't frickin' win an Oscar, and she's incredible, and so many amazing films going back to the '80s. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think there were many factors in Mikey Madison's favor, and many factors in Demi Moore's favor. There's no quantifiable way to know, obviously, how close they were, or which appealed more to voters, besides the fact that Mikey Madison ultimately won.
Maybe it was one vote.
We will never know. We will never know.
What if it had been a tie? That would have been the moment of the night.
I would have loved that. I mean, I don't love ties as a concept because I like having like a winner, but every now and then there's a time where I'd be okay with it. And
what if Emma Stone could make it and Isabella Rossellini presented Best Actress and she said it's a tie?
Oh my god, like mother like daughter.
And it was Mikey Madison and Demi Moore sharing the stage. That would have, I don't think that'll ever happen again. There's just so many Academy members, right, Cody? I just don't think there'll be a tie.
I mean, we saw a tie in sound editing.
Yeah.
13 years ago. Sure. And that did feel like, whoa, okay, interesting. Didn't think I'd see this. But, I mean, yeah. And you have to imagine that's because there's less people voting in those categories than in Best Actress.
Yeah. So yeah, at the end of all this, as the days pass, I'm becoming much more comfortable, very happy for Mikey Madison. That's a great win. Like, her career in the next 10 years is going to be very exciting, Cody. She is going to work with the best directors, like, who really use her talent in great ways. I'm excited to see what she does next. I'm like crossing my fingers. Demi Moore will get some good roles here in the next few years. I would love for her to be back. That would be awesome. So I'm just like, come on, guys. I know she's older, but let's give Demi Moore some rich character work here in her 60s. That would be great.
Yeah, I think we're all just traumatized from the way that Hollywood has treated women of a certain age for decades. But I think the field is a little different now, and hopefully this isn't the one and only chance for her.
Yeah. Let's touch on Best Actor a little bit, Cody. I know some people thought Timothée Chalamet could do it. And, with that SAG win, I was like, it might be Chalamet, but I just never felt it. And it did end up going to Brody. Like, what did you think of that win for Brody?
Yeah, it didn't surprise me. I mean, he is giving the type of performance that is just so... undeniable is a strong word, especially because I wouldn't vote for him. But it's the kind of performance that I think a lot of actors especially see. Yeah. And are just kind of bowled over by. First of all, he has a lot to do. He's in a lot of the movie, and it's a long movie.
It's like 2.5 hours of his performance, I read. It's like, he's in a lot of that thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I think it was just kind of perfectly tuned to Academy sensibilities. It is odd that he was the only previous winner of all 20 acting nominees, and he won again. Like, that feels a little strange to me, that he now has 2 Oscars. He was
the only previous winner in the whole thing? That's nuts.
Of all the acting nominees, yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he won. He gave the longest speech in history. Is that right, Cody? 5 minutes and 40 seconds?
Yes.
It felt long to me. I didn't realize it was that long, but holy cow.
It did feel long. Especially because he kept saying, "I'll be brief." And then he was the least brief anyone's ever been at the Oscars. Take that, Greer Garson, who I think was the previous record holder from Mrs. Miniver.
He had a timer on him. He's like, I gotta beat Greer.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't love the speech. It was kind of meandering.
All over the place.
Yeah, I just don't understand winning an Oscar and not having something explicitly planned out.
Right.
Because now both times he won the Oscar, he told the orchestra to be quiet, and this time he didn't really have anything huge to say. Like, if you tell the orchestra
his
to be
speech
quiet,
last time was pretty good. I thought the pianist here, like, he had good moments in that speech that got the people up on their feet and stuff.
sure, and that had the excitement of he was not expected to be the winner at all.
Yeah.
He was
Oh,
probably predicted to be third place at best, and this speech just felt kind of, if knowing what I know about Adrian Brody based on what I've heard and what I've seen, it's not surprising that he gave this type of speech. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Were you sad for Cillian Murphy having to stand there for nearly 6 minutes?
It's fine. He looked like he was meditating.
He was meditating. There's this video like zooms in on him, and he's like, you can. He's probably like, okay, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the speech was, not so great, but like the win was good for me. Like you said, you would have gone with someone else, but Coleman Domingo.
Sebastian Stan.
Sebastian Stan was your choice.
He would have got my vote. I think he's.
He's good. Yeah,
kind of
Apprentice.
Unbelievably good in The Apprentice.
Yeah.
Or Coleman Domingo. They were both top two for me. But Adrian Brody was good in The Brutalist. Obviously, it's a good performance. Nobody's saying it's not. I think all four of the acting winners are good performances. I'll say that. I would not have voted for any of them myself. But there's no egregious winners here. There's no... I'll be nice. I'm not going to say names here. This isn't a nice show. But there's nobody here who I'm kind of mortified is now an Academy Award winner for that specific performance.
Yeah. And then the supporting acting categories were totally predictable. You could just like take a nap at that point, right? You were just like, I mean, there was some talk there at the end that Saldana might not win. Like it might go to Rossellini. And I'm like, you're just like drumming up like all of these theories and things. Like it's going to be Saldana. That would be crazy. And so they both won. Anything to say about those two categories, those speeches, Cody?
It's fine. I mean, I just told myself this is a win for Avatar, which is one of my... I love her in that movie. I think it's an incredible performance. That should have been an Oscar-winning performance, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Kieran Culkin, I don't really feel any way about his win. I like that movie a lot. I don't love his performance. It's not bad. I prefer Jesse Eisenberg. Yes, they're both supporting actor winners are leads in their movie. That is true. So...
4 lead
selective
wins.
Levels of outrage at that. If that makes you mad, go for it. Doesn't really bother me too much.
Yeah, I mean, Culkin's in so much of a real pain. Like if Mikey Madison had won supporting actress for Anora, I would have been like, okay. I feel like she should be in lead, but I did like in Culkin's speech, there was like a running gag from his Emmy win where he was like, hey, you said if I won an Emmy, we could have a third kid. And then it goes into the Oscars where his wife said, well, gee, we're not having a fourth, Kieran, unless you win the frickin' Oscar. And then he won the Oscar and he's like, can we have 4? That was kind of like, when does that ever happen, Cody? Like a running gag from an Emmy win to an Oscar win. I mean,
right,
maybe that was the first one.
It's the kind of thing you can do if you're just collecting a lot of trophies, like he's been lately.
For 2 different things, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then in picture director, I mean... As we talked about, Cody, in our predictions, I was like, Anora is not going to only win picture and director. That's weird. That's not going to happen. So it was like, well, I feel like they go all in on Anora, or it like only wins director and Conclave takes picture. Were you? I texted you, Cody. I was thinking about going to Conclave, A Real Pain. Did you ever, in those last few days, like think maybe I step away from Anora, or were you always in on Anora for picture director? Picture director, screenplay. Yeah.
Screenplay was the one I obviously felt the least sure about because Anora was having trouble all season winning writing awards.
Winning anything.
The biggest one it won was WGA, which is important. The Guild is important. And I had Anora predicted. I didn't buy A Real Pain winning just based on the BAFTA win.
Based on BAFTA,
because it wasn't in Best Picture. And even before they opened up the Best Picture lineup to more than 5 nominees, they didn't often give Best Screenplay wins to non-Best Picture nominees. The last one to do it was Eternal Sunshine, which is 5 years before they expanded Best Picture. So it's not like this is a thing that is a remnant of just now. They just rarely do it. It is a very, very aligned category with Best Picture. So I never bought A Real Pain winning here. Seriously. I was tempted to switch when I saw how many people were actually predicting it, but I stuck with Anora, knowing it was winning Best Picture. It just made a lot of sense to me. It didn't make sense, to your point, for it to win picture director and not screenplay. That didn't,
Right.
which
Weird.
I should have expanded that logic to actress and editing, obviously.
Mhm.
But picture director didn't make sense. Weirdly, the combination that made the most sense to me was Anora winning only Best Picture. Which
you were ready for that to happen, Cody.
I thought it'd be so
Just
fun.
Picture.
I mean, we've been saying for years that with the expansion of Best Picture and the preferential ballot, there's gonna be a year where Best Picture goes to a movie that only wins that category. And this was, I would argue, the closest we've ever had to that actually happening. Just based on how the season was going, it was spread like crazy. It happened at Critics' Choice, so we knew it was possible. But ultimately, picture director screenplay does make more sense, obviously.
Yeah, I mean that would have been wild. I think I when Anora won screenplay and editing, I thought, okay, this is going in a good direction here. I mean, if Anora had lost screenplay and editing, I would not have been expecting it to necessarily win picture. So I hope that year comes, Cody. We get a year where there's a movie that's kind of like on the fringes and it just can't frickin' win anything, but it wins picture. That will be a moment. You think it'll happen? I don't, but it would be great.
Every season is different. You never know. We went from 2 years where the Best Picture winner was so clear and it was a huge sweep to a year where it was not clear until the last few weeks. And then it ended up having a little mini sweep. I would not call 5 wins a sweep. But clearly the Academy pinned it as the movie of the night. Yeah,
and then we all knew Conclave was winning adapted screenplay. Were you surprised that that's the only category it won? That it didn't get anything else?
I mean, given that I was predicting it for editing, I guess. But I mean, those were the only 2 categories I was seriously considering it in.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, people were reading too much into BAFTA and SAG to go with Conclave and picture at the end of the day?
I do. I see what adapted screenplay and editing, which a lot of people were predicting, makes you think, which is then, then it's going to win Best Picture. Not necessarily. I mean, we've seen years where it's spread really thin. It didn't end up winning editing, obviously. I think SAG and BAFTA, those specific wins made sense at those specific categories. Conclave is a very actory movie. It stars actors that everybody knows and loves, all giving great performances, and it's a movie centered around the acting. Yes, the screenplay is the star of the show. I understand that. But the movie lives and dies on its performances, which are all excellent. And BAFTA giving it Best Film, it just kind of feels like the movie that BAFTA would most appreciate. So that doesn't surprise me. Yeah,
didn't it win at BAFTA Best British Film? And then it won Best Film. It's okay. And then The Brutalist did pretty well, Cody. It won some technical prizes and won actor. When they were doing director, when Tarantino was about ready to say it, I was like, it could be Courbet. I was kind of prepared for that. I don't know about you.
There were people at my party who were saying it could be Courbet, but at that point in the night, there was such an Anora love. And again, I didn't think, we knew it was winning picture at that point. I didn't think it was going to win picture, screenplay, and editing for Sean Baker, but not director. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think if Courbet had taken DGA, I think he would have won director.
Sure. But there just was never really an energy behind that nomination to give it a win in any awards, really, except for what he won? The Globe?
He won the Globe and he won BAFTA.
That's it?
He won BAFTA.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had 2.
I think part of the problem is he's not known in Hollywood as opposed to Sean Baker, who, yes, is maybe not a household name per se, but has been working in the indie sphere a lot longer. Brady Corbet also kept his Golden Globe speeches were not, I would call, amazing. They may have rubbed some people the wrong way.
Yeah. But he's so talented. I think he'll be back if he makes a movie like The Brutalist again in the next decade. He'll be back and maybe he'll win. We'll see. But yeah, those are the top 8 categories. Anything to say about the technical prizes? We've talked about the shorts and some of the things we missed, and editing, of course. Any other, wins in the technical categories that you really loved, or anything like that?
I mean, everything went about as expected. There was some nervousness with best sound. I saw a lot of people switching to a complete unknown last minute, and I ended up going to Dune, which is what I predicted, and I think you as well.
I stayed with Dune.
Yeah. it just felt like the most sound. So I get the Academy possibly loved A Complete Unknown, even though it was one of 2 Best Picture nominees that didn't win a single award.
Yeah, well, in our conversation about that category, Cody, you brought up a good point. You said, well, Brian, in that category, we have A Complete Unknown and Amelia Perez and Wicked. So it's kind of like 3 musical-style films. Like, whereas Dune is a completely separate kind of movie, it makes sense that there will be, vote splitting between those 3 musical films, whereas Dune will it'll win in the end. And that's what happened, and that made sense, I think.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people freaking out about A Complete Unknown winning Cinema Audio Society. And I get that, but I don't think that's enough to hang your hat on a prediction on. Much like how everybody was jumping ship to Porcelain War and documentary feature because it won DGA. And I was like, I don't think that's enough, you guys. And neither one ended up.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like in the last 5 years, there was a documentary winner. It might have been PGA. Like, it just won one thing, and I was like, is that enough to overtake the film I wanted to win? And it was. But I think DGA and PGA are different. Even though The Wild Robot won PGA, right? Yes, it did. That didn't seem to make a huge difference. It still went to Flo for the Oscar. So it's not like winning PGA is the be-all and end-all.
Right. Flo went in with just a Golden Globe win. So that's very impressive. I mean, I think that category was probably also very close. I think all 3 of the features, international, documentary, and animated, were probably very close between the very obvious number 1, number 2.
I wonder if The Wild Robot just peaked too early. If that film had come out at Christmas, like maybe that could have helped. It was like huge in September, October, and then maybe by January, February, just, all attention was more on Flo, which was a late release. Might have helped. I don't know. There's
that, and I think people were charmed by Flo's really scrappy story and the way that director was positioned as like the mascot for the film in a way that the studio films can't really replicate.
Yeah.
I do think that was... I think all 3 of the feature wins are completely due to the expanded international membership. I don't think a traditional Academy goes for any of those 3 films.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It still bums me out, though. It's like Toy Story 4 wins an animated feature at the Oscars, but not The Wild Robot. I'm just like, what? But no, that's a good win for Flo. That was a lovely film,
better than The Wild Robot, so...
What?
I didn't love The Wild Robot.
You like Toy Story 4 more than... Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Wild Robot was not really for me. It was...
Okay, interesting. Oh, man. That was one of my favorite theatrical movies of the year. I really enjoyed it.
I won't say anything else about it.
But yeah, we both called I'm Still Here for international feature, Cody. I was like, are we just hope dicting there? It might just be Amelia Perez, but as we talked about, it just seems like there's enough passion for I'm Still Here, and with that picture nomination, it's going to happen, and it did. What a great moment. Congratulations, Brazil.
Right, we talked about this in our immediate reactions after the nominations, that I had a feeling, and I think you may have agreed, that I'm Still Here getting into Best Picture may be enough for it to win this category, and we couldn't have predicted at that point how severe the blowback against Amelia Perez would be. But I sensed that something was coming, that it was just going to have continual backlash, 13 nominations, not really well-liked as a movie outside of certain spheres, and that ended up coming to fruition. And I think getting into Best Picture for I'm Still Here was huge for it, and because we've never seen 2 Best Picture nominees face off in this category ever, and it always goes to a Best Picture nominee if there is one. So the fact that there was 2 meant it went to the one that I think once people started watching it because of its Best Picture nomination, its Golden Globe Best Actress win, people realized, oh, maybe I don't have to vote for Amelia Perez. I can vote for I'm Still Here, which I'm watching because it's a movie that I've been told I have to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's sad to think that just because, I'm Still Here maybe misses Best Picture, that means just Amelia Perez has to win, just because that's the one that more people are going to watch. So in that regard, I'm very thrilled that I'm Still Here got into picture. It meant a win for that movie, and that was just so lovely to see, Fernanda Torres on her feet, hugging her director, and that was a great moment. Speaking of deflating, if they had just said Amelia Perez, we would have been like, okay. It wouldn't have been a great moment. So, and then Wicked won 2, as we predicted, costume design and production design, a win for the substance and makeup. That's a win for the horror genre. Even though I
Yes.
still think it was weird for it to only win one, I'm like, at least it won something. The Substance is an Academy Award winner.
I'm gonna never have any issues with horror being recognized anywhere by the Academy.
Yeah, but if The Substance wasn't there, then Nosferatu probably would have won. So that would have also been a win for...
Or Wicked, honestly.
Or Wicked, maybe, because it was stronger. Yeah.
She's wearing makeup the whole time.
When I was thinking about it, like on my drive home, I'm like, okay, The Substance didn't take actress, but I mean, it was a pretty good year for horror for both The Substance and Nosferatu to get multiple nominations. I mean, that's great. It doesn't happen every year.
Right. Regardless of them ultimately winning or not, the Academy still said, we like these movies, which they may not have done so 10 years ago or so.
Yeah. So any kind of final thoughts about the win ceremony? Anything we haven't touched on, Cody? I mean, I think we've kind of talked about everything at this point. Is there anything you wanted to mention? Like anything we haven't talked about?
I think the wins continue to show how different the tastes of this new Academy are than the tastes of the Academy 6 or 7 years ago, before they brought in this influx of newer, younger, more international voters. They are unafraid of skirting away from Academy traditions and tastes. They're unafraid of embracing certain genres like horror, embracing indie films with prickly subject matter like The Substance, like Anora even. And I think that's all the better. I think the fact that there were so many first-time nominees, like I said, Adrien Brody was the only previous winner of any of the acting nominees. All 5 Best Director nominees were first-time nominees. I think that's really exciting, and I think that is good for the art form because it allows new and previously unheralded creative voices to flourish, and that's what we need the Oscars for. We need the Oscars to help projects get made, because nothing makes things move in Hollywood like money, but shortly behind that is awards. So if we continue to champion movies like the ones that were championed this year, which was, I'll say, a good batch of nominees and winners for the most part, then that's all the better for film.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this year at the Oscars. Like the wins, the nominations, like it was a really cool variety of films, big movies like Wicked and Dune Part 2 and smaller films. For an indie $6 million movie like Anora to do as well as it did, I mean, that's pretty cool. Yeah. You don't see that every year.
I believe it's the lowest grossing Best Picture winner in history. That might be...
Really?
I might not be right about that.
Coda?
Okay, movies that are
beyond streaming films,
movies that actually got a theatrical release, which is, it's funny because that wasn't really part of the story. In fact, the story of Anora was like, hey, it actually made money. It just didn't make Avatar levels of money, but it made money for the type of movie it is. And like Sean Baker said, we just need to keep championing movies and the theatrical experience, because almost every Best Picture nominee was a success story box office wise in its own way. You had obviously huge hits like Wicked and Doom Part 2, and then movies like The Substance, Conclave, Anora that did well within the realm of what type of movie they are. Like, sure, they were maybe touching 100 million at most worldwide, but for a movie like Conclave, that's amazing. For a movie like The Substance, that's amazing.
Yeah, I still think the craziest thing was The Substance getting into Picture and Director. Just like, how did that happen?
Agreed.
How did enough Academy members go all in on that movie? So, I'm still thrilled with how well that film did, and just in its nominations. And it was just a really cool variety of films. Sometimes we can just go all in on like the big blockbuster film that everyone likes, but that was not the case this year. It was a really good mix of movies. And so, yeah, I still like the Oscars, Cody.
Me too, Brian.
I'm glad to hear it. So this has been so much fun, Cody, doing these prediction videos with you these last few weeks. And of course, we will have you back. Cody and I have been talking about, I want to go back to the beginning. There's a lot of blind spots in my Oscars history, especially in those early years. So Cody and I will be back in a couple months here. We're going to talk about the first Academy Awards. We're going to do a full breakdown of that show, its origins, like the Academy Awards and the categories. So that'll be fun just to touch on some early Oscars history. But before we wrap up here, Cody, if you can tell our viewers where they can find you online, now would be the time.
You can find my writing and podcasting at Next Best Picture and Awards Watch. Check out my horror movie podcast, Halloweeners, and I'm on every social media platform at CodyMonster91.
All right, thanks again, Cody, and we will see you next time at the Awards Contender.